this bill overall, I think, will not be effective. I think in many aspects it's naive. And I can understand, though, members, I really can, how many people, many Minnesotans, in responding to a pollster or anyone else, would say, at least on the surface, that, yeah, showing an ID of some kind at a polling place, that sounds reasonable. And I'm sure there are friends and members of my own family who might have, a few months ago, said that to a pollster, because it seems to make a certain surface sense. I acknowledge that. But when you peel back and you look at what this will really do and really be in practice, that's when you see the real pitfalls. Members, if I had to, as I look around the state and I see a lot of rural newspapers, rural conservative newspapers, frankly, editorialize against this, I would summarize their opposition. If I had to put it on a bumper sticker, I would say that their opposition comes down to this slogan. It would be tiny problem, huge price tag. Tiny problem, huge price tag. The evidence, not the supposition, not the speculation, is, according to the Center for Electoral Integrity, that in the 2008 election, there were 38 people, all felons, who either voted or registered illegally. 38 people. That's it. So that's the really tiny problem that we have. Are there people out there who will do the wrong thing? Yes, of course. You're always going to have some error. But there is not the factual justification that there was in Indiana or other states. Big price tag? Yes, in two ways. First, the most obvious and literal way is the dollar price tag. We've had a discussion here about the fiscal note for both the state of Minnesota and, of course, probably more importantly, for our local units of government who actually have to administer this new regime of photo ID. But there's another price tag that we have to consider too, and that's the price of fencing out many tens of thousands and maybe more voters in Minnesota who are honest, who are law-abiding, and who have been voting for a long, long time in Minnesota. And this will make it a lot harder for good people, for honest people, to do what they've always done, and that is be heard as a citizen of Minnesota in an election. And I think that's unfortunate. Members, this bill does not directly address the issue, the only issue that we have really documented, of felon voting. Felons have driver's licenses. Felons have passports. Felons have other forms of photo ID that they could show in a same-day registration situation. This bill really seems aimed at voter impersonation. A person who walks up to a polling place claiming to be Jane Doe or John Doe really isn't and votes for that person. But we have no conviction in Minnesota that I know of, and no county attorney in Minnesota that I know of, that has seriously pursued a case of voter impersonation. Might it have happened? Yeah, maybe. But we don't have that on the record as a real serious problem, or a problem at all, in Minnesota. So I think we have to consider that. Members, as this winded its way through committee, there were several amendments offered to soften the blow on the most vulnerable Minnesotans. There were amendments offered in multiple committees to make sure that women who live in battered women's shelters, who by definition aren't living at their permanent address, could get some relief. We had amendments that would offer some relief to veterans who are in veterans' homes. That was defeated. We had amendments that would do what Indiana does. Indiana, the case that went all the way to the Supreme Court and got the thumbs up from the Supreme Court, which says anyone over the age of 65 can vote absentee. No excuses absentee, and doesn't have to show a photo ID. We floated that idea. That didn't work. We talked about the disabled or people in group homes. That didn't work as well. That was rejected on roll call votes. So members, despite attempts to soften the blow here, I fear that this bill, though I don't doubt Representative Kiffmeyer's good intentions, will really fall hard on Minnesotans who have the most difficult time in complying with its provisions. And I think that's unfortunate. I want to talk just briefly about the alternatives. I had the amendment earlier today. There are less intrusive and more effective ways to accomplish the same aims, either reversing motor voter, increasing penalties for fraudulent voting that is intentionally done, whether it's registering or voting. There's a whole array of data sharing provisions. We here, bipartisanly in this House, last year and 2 years ago, passed some of those already, and they've worked very, very well, sharing data so that we can screen people who shouldn't be on the voter list, felons or otherwise. And there's a bill pending to do that right now, actually, in this House this year that would allow the Secretary of State and the Department of Corrections and the court system to pool and share data so that we can screen and effectively filter out people who shouldn't be on the voter rolls. So there are alternatives. There are other ways, but those apparently and unfortunately have been rejected. So members, what we're left with is what all those newspapers editorialized against, which is a bill that is basically that is unjustified because it's about a tiny problem and a huge price tag. High price tag in terms of dollars, but more importantly, in terms of the price we'll pay in voter integrity and in democracy and in the ability of Minnesotans to have themselves counted on Election Day. So members, I strongly urge a no vote.